The 21-year-old Davis is charged with 9 counts of first-degree attempted murder, all stemming from a wild shootout with police 2 years ago.
Well, now Davis is accused of trying to kill again. His target this time, 6 police officers.
8 officers were wounded, and now Davis is on trial.
He wasn't afraid. He just started shooting.
When they went to the door, he opened fire with a machine gun.
She was screaming like crazy. The detective ran right in the apartment. There was no way to stop. He just took off. We had to go in.
I'm going to bring charges. As long as I can get them in, me and my lawyers are seeking to get you press charges against them for trying to murder me.
Oh my God, it's the Mad Beats.
Here's the story of Larry Davis, Bronx's most infamous, who went toe-to-toe with the corrupt New York City Police Department and lived to tell the tale. Larry Davis, also known as Adam Abdul Hakim, was born on May 28, 1966. He was an African-American from New York City who became known worldwide in November 1986 for his infamous shootout in the South Bronx with officers of the New York City Police Department. On record, 6 police officers were shot in the shootout, but according to Davis, the shooting was for his self-defense. Now let's dive right into it. He was born in Newberry, South Carolina, to Mary and Larry Davis Sr. He was the youngest. Their first house in the Bronx was on Woody Crest Avenue, which was 2 blocks away from Yankee Stadium. At the age of 10, his father walked out on the family, leaving him to learn lessons from the neighborhood toughs who made their destinies through force and guile. But just like any other child who had big dreams for their future, his dream was to be a rapper. Davis had so much passion for his dream that he was known among his peers as musically talented, and even more especially for his ability to play numerous instruments. Aside from that, he was very entrepreneurial in the sense that he even operated a small music studio in the Bronx and Manhattan, while he also repaired and remodeled motorcycles. According to his peers, midway through his adolescent years, Davis began dealing drugs. However, he reportedly stopped dealing drugs when the woman expecting his first child miscarried.
When I lost my son and, involving with the woman I was involved with at that time, it was time to pull away from that kind of, dealings in terms of the drug thing.
He learned of his woman's crack use, which he suspected to be the cause of the miscarriage.
I remember just sitting with him and he was talking, he was saying, yo, you know what I heard? I heard the reason why the baby died is cause, it was on cocaine. He never even knew the girl was using drugs. He said, yo, Sham, you know what happened? I found out that homeboy, talking about one of the police, you know what I'm saying, was the one supplying her with it. This is somebody that I was doing business with, Sham. I said, what? And I was like, yo, man, that's it, P. They killed my son. And that was like the turning point for him. Because he cared about the girl, but he really was enthusiastic. He was like excited because the girl was giving birth to his first child. It meant so much to him. And it just threw him off like, yo, that's it. I don't care, P. I'm out this game.
During his lifetime, Davis had one child, a daughter called Larima Davis, who was born in 1986. His arrest records go way back to the 1980s, which include a robbery conviction and subsequent probation violations. Before his infamous shootout with the police, a court hearing for his violation had been postponed 4 times. His first arrest was in 1980, and Davis was just 14 years then, when he was apprehended in Suffolk County for suspicion of grand larceny. 2 months later, he was in custody in the Bronx for resisting arrest and the possession of a stolen property. He incurred 3 more arrests in 1984, and 6 months after that, he was charged in Manhattan with robbery. He was granted a youthful offender status by the judge and was sentenced to 5 years in probation. He was arrested again in 1986 for the use of a deadly weapon, assault, and possession of a shotgun, and was released on a $2,500 bail. About his infamous shootout, this is what the police said happened. You're welcome to take it with a pinch of salt. Mind you, we will play you a video of what actually happened in Larry's own words and some other eyewitnesses. On the 19th of November 1986, at 8:26 p.m., 6 police officers, 4 detectives and 2 police officers evaded the entrance of a 19th-century brick apartment building at 1231 Fulton Avenue in the Bronx Avenue of Morrisania, with 6 more policemen covering the courtyard, fire escapes, and alley. Additionally, there were 15 other units on standby in case their suspect did not go down quietly. Though the building's intercom was broken, one tenant noticed the policemen through the front door's glass panel and let them in. The apartment they were targeting was Davis's sister's. They roamed down the L-shaped hall with its decaying yellow and brown walls until they came to the door of Unit 1A, the home of Regina Lewis. The police department was on a manhunt for Larry Davis. That year, there had been 5 triple homicides and 2 quadruple homicides in New York City, which all seemed to somehow point in the direction of their prime suspect. According to the police, the 7 incidents, 23 murders in all, were drug-related. And as you know, Davis used to deal in drugs, and the murders were fueled by the emergence of crack in the city 2 years prior. The police stormed his sister's apartment in hopes of finding their prime suspect, a 20-year-old described as a squat, muscular black man with inset eyes, who to the police was known as a little package of Mr. T. Davis had also gained another name from others. He was known as Loco Larry because of his unbalanced demeanor. Davis had moved into his sister's apartment, and so the people in the apartment with Davis were his sister, Regina Lewis, her sister's husband, Joseph, and their 3 children, a 3- and 2-year-old son and a 4-month-old baby girl. Davis had been living with them for a month on Fulton Avenue when the police manhunt occurred. His sister lived across the hall from him with her husband and 2 children, so the children could move from one place to another. In a way, Davis had some fears. It was like he could sense the impending doom which would soon come for him, and so he used to calm himself with an assortment of drugs and slept on the couch with a loaded gun. On the night of the manhunt, as if he knew, he grew anxious to the point that there was no way of calming him down. Not even seeing his newborn daughter could seem to soothe the feeling of anxiety that was creeping up within him. In the hallway of the apartment, he removed his revolver from his waistband and pressed the barrel against his cheekbone. He slumped against the wall and began to spit, making her sister think that he was reacting to a drug overdose. After hours of tension, Regina and her husband were able to get the gun away from Davis. Shortly after this, as if it was a preparation for what was to come, the police came. After Davis's temporary breakdown in the hallway, he sat on the couch with his baby and eldest nephew when he heard a knock on the door. During that time, his girlfriend Melody Flood and the rest of the family were in the apartment. At the sound of the knock, Davis moved from the couch to a back bedroom with the children, while the rest of the adults stayed in the living room. Davis could sense that it was the police, and he believed they were there to kill him. The policeman kicked the door in and ushered Lewis to the right of the apartment entrance. Armed with a stashed shotgun and an automatic handgun, Davis shot at them several times.
He just started shooting.
When they went to the door, he opened fire with a machine gun.
I fired one, hitting him with impact into the mouth, and then coming out the back of his neck, and he flew in the air into many of the other cops who was back behind him with weapons. So because he was between them and myself, they didn't begin just immediately shooting because he was there, and many of them dropped their guns trying to catch him in the air,
forcing the police to huddle behind a cinder block wall in the foyer to avoid more unexpected barrage. Because at that point, Davis was going for the kill. During the shootout, the police fired back a total of 24 shots, including 4 shotgun blasts that logged into a plaster and wooden dresser. It was a very serious shootout because 6 police officers were hit. The person with the worst injury was an emergency service police officer, Mary Ellen Buckley, who was hit in the face and lost 5 uppers and 5 lower teeth. Emergency service officer John O'Hara was hit in the eye with a buckshot and pawed at the white-hot lead pinballing between his cornea and retina. With the development of the situation, there was only one escape route left for the police, and that was backwards.
When some of them caught him, they dropped their guns. And they said, back out, back the hell out. He got one, get out, back out. They're yelling and screaming, and you hear this, massive noise, yelling, screaming, cursing each other out on their way, pulling out. Get the hell out, back the F out, cursing.
Detective Donald O'Sullivan, who had entered upon the initial breach, dodged the onslaught and headed to a third-floor apartment where he called for reinforcements. At 9:52, the police radio revealed, "There is a Scorpio unit on the roof."
Suspect is known to be armed with a shotgun, 45 automatic, 357 Magnum, small caliber handgun, and an Uzi submachine gun.
They advised they had seen a man wearing army fatigues and light pants in the parking lot of a 15-story building between 168 and 169. Davis had moved out of the apartment, entered the vacated building hallway, saw that the next-door apartment lock had been shot off during the exchange of gunfire, entered, and headed straight for the window where he exited, dropping 10 feet into the rear courtyard, where he vaulted a brick wall into an alley and escaped unnoticed.
To this day, I still don't know how I did it, but I did it. It was a distance, how good. From the window to some mountain cliff. That's just a cliff outside the window over on the side. And this guy had some vicious pit bulls in that private house, that it was a private house owned. And I tell you, man, that's what I say to this day. I say, Allah bless me, because I jumped from that distance in midair and jumped at least, I would say about 25 feet or probably more.
Davis had the ammunition to off a dozen more police officers should the time come. 2 injured police officers were transported to Bronx Lebanon Hospital, and another walked there, leaving a trail of blood. A 4th was taken to Lincoln Hospital, and 2 were taken to Bellevue Hospital Center in Manhattan. The department chief revealed that this was the worst shooting in the police department's history. The shootout resulted in an even more brutal manhunt for Davis. Every police cruiser in the upstate Albany had a picture of Davis taped to their visors. His description was broadcast to every Illinois state trooper at the beginning of each shift, and Baltimore Patrol received 3 daily updates. In New York City, there was a bounty on his head, a $25,000 reward in exchange for Davis, yet no one had seen or heard from Davis after the shootout. What was even more surprising was the way Davis was slowly achieving a cult hero status, all because he had just hit 6 blues with at least 16 rounds from a .45 caliber automatic, a shotgun, and a .32 caliber automatic. On November 24th, 5 days after the shootout, a caller identifying himself as Larry Davis phoned WABC TV 3 times and asked for reporter Johnson of Eyewitness News. The last call was recorded, and his girlfriend Melody, whom he had a daughter with, confirmed that it was truly Davis on the phone. On the recording, Davis warned, "It is going to be dead or alive, and it is not going to be alive. They'll have to take me through the morgue. Right now, I am unstable. Everybody is looking for me. The first sight they see of me, they are going to kill me. They will never find me. I am hiding out." You can already tell that Davis was tough. The police tip line on Davis was 1,000 calls per day on average, with daylight hours often bringing in 100 an hour. At the same time, 6 strategic police raids, each bigger and more expansive than the last, took place 6 days after the shootout. Each time, Davis either managed to escape or was nowhere to be found. One police officer reportedly said, "He's like a cockroach. Every time you put your foot down, he sneaks away someplace else." At a church gathering in Harlem, Mayor Ed Koch urged Davis to turn himself into a priest or a minister who would facilitate a safe surrender. He told the Daily News, "I expect every police officer, no matter how angry, to act in a professional way and not engage in vigilante justice." Before Davis's shootout with the police, the only other major police manhunt in New York City occurred 3 months prior. The August 18th capture of Errol Campbell, also known as Robert Ralston, who was charged with the shooting death of a police officer, Scott Goodell, on the 28th of June. Robert avoided capture for 51 days until he was nabbed by the police while attempting to escape from a Brooklyn apartment by climbing down the fire escape. But unlike Robert, who had jumped parole for a robbery conviction by escaping to Jamaica, Davis was not a worldly man. He only knew places in the Bronx and Manhattan, and his entire family lived close to each other. Davis's brother Marvin, who was the second oldest boy in the family, had watched Davis, whom he had nicknamed Baby Huey, fight for respect from his older brothers, and one by one, Davis exerted his dominance over his older brothers, but not Marvin. Marvin knew how his little brother's time as a juvenile offender on Rikers Island had hardened him. He knew he got beaten by the guards and was too scared to ever go back to prison. Marvin himself had served 6 solid years in prison for crimes like murder, but despite his past, he was now a Brooklyn construction worker and a published poet. When Davis went into hiding, Marvin's apartment at 2116 Vice Avenue in the Bronx was raided by 100 police officers in search of his brother, after they had noticed a light and television set on when they knew Marvin was not home. They forced his infant niece and nephew to stand out in the cold until 1:50 a.m. He later accused the police of stealing $1,500 from his residence. Though Marvin's place was not the most obvious place for Davis to lie low, he had never been there. The brothers were distant from each other, but when Marvin received a strange phone call from an unidentified male instructing him to go to the corner of Finley Avenue and 167th Street, he believed that his brother was trying to make contact. After waiting for 20 minutes, a husky man in a gray overcoat and brown ski mask handed him a letter with instructions to read and memorize it. The 2-page single-spaced letter was a surprising form of communication because Davis was illiterate. The letter stated that he was ready to turn himself in and blamed the whole shootout on the police. The letter also indicates that he was worried about a police detective called Crazy Joe, whom he feared was going to shoot him down like a dog. Marvin recognized the contents of the letter to be that of his brother, whom he called a bully, punk, coward, and a braggart. On December 6th, 17 days after the shootout, Davis entered Twin Parks West. The structure opened in the early 70s with the aim of subsidized affordable housing. The black and tan brick building, which emulated the two-tone hues of many nicer, older apartment buildings in the Bronx, was spread among 12 locations in hopes of fostering a sense of community. Davis's sister, Margaret Jenkins, and her 4 children lived on the 2nd floor. Soon after, the police started receiving tips. The reporters were also tipped off, and they rushed to the scene and listened in on cryptic police radio transmissions. Davis became a legend to the street gangs who lauded him as an example of evading the law and winning.
I went to a projects building not too far away from there. And within no more than 3-4 minutes, it was at least about good 15,000 police cars.
Davis was nowhere to be found in the Jenkins apartment, but a wiretapped phone conversation between Davis's relative indicated otherwise. With nowhere to run, at 3:15 p.m., Davis confronted Teresa Ali and her 2-year-old son in the hallway.
I went in the apartment. She didn't even know me. I went in the apartment and I explained the situation. And she was a very religious woman. She had some beautiful little children, playing with her children. And as we sat there, hoping these guys clear out, I'm hoping these guys clear out, me and her began to talk. And then we find out that she goes to my mother's brother's church. She knew they were buddies. Her husband came home. He was so scared. I mean, I ain't never seen it in my life. He's up there, Lord Jesus, please, please, please. This is the way he was talking. Please, they gonna kill us all. Oh God. I'm like, calm down, brother. You gonna be all right. Trust me on this. You gonna be all right. Just calm down.
Sophia was expecting her husband to be home by 8 p.m., and he always rang first. Sophia's husband was allowed into the apartment by police officers who went up with him in an elevator. Sophia's husband, Elroy, despite the darkness in the room, noticed Davis's shadow behind his wife. Davis instructed Elroy to go outside and make a phone call to his girlfriend and his mother, writing their numbers for him. He told Elroy to let them know that he loved them and that he was okay, and also to pick up Chinese food. This was an indication that he wanted the police to know who was in the apartment. Davis allowed Teresa and his son to leave. For some reason, Davis trusted Sophia and began telling her his story of how he sold drugs for police officers and became a liability when he quit, and how on the day of the shootout, the Blues hurled racial slurs, and how the white police officers shot first while his niece was in his arms. Meanwhile, Elroy had bought the Chinese food and reported to the police Davis's whereabouts. Sophia encouraged her captor to record his side of the story on a tape, but Davis wanted to do it when he makes it alive. Davis's anxiety was gray when Elroy hadn't returned. He later discovered that the police had figured out where he was. The police phoned the apartment, which Davis answered. Davis was kept on the line for 6 hours. He told the police that he had 2 grenades and 2 guns, and he demanded a helicopter to fly him to Washington, D.C. He also said he was going to go to the 14th window with bed sheets. But he later leaned out of the window and yelled out to Melody, who was standing on the street. After hours of negotiation, Davis was taken into custody without incident. A peaceful surrender. People chanted his name. But according to Larry Davis, the greater part of all what happened was manufactured by the police and leaked to the press to make their department look good. Meanwhile, they were the instigators and drug suppliers, who in the end wanted to act as judge, jury, and executioner.
I was not coming up out of there the new NYPD because I know how vicious they are, and I was not just going to walk in the hands of NYPD, no way. I knew exactly how to get down.
At 11 p.m., he was processed and evaluated by doctors upon his arrival at Rikers Island. Davis was charged with 9 counts of attempted murder of a police officer and a minimum sentence of 25 years imprisonment if found guilty. He was also charged with unlawful imprisonment and burglary of the Sewers apartment. The police also wanted to ask him about his involvement in the gang-style murders. Attorney William Kunstler, who was known for taking unpopular cases, chose to represent Davis. The basis of Davis's defense was he acted in self-defense.
I'd like a third world jury. That's a jury of his peers. I think they would understand the situation. They wouldn't be overwhelmed by the fact that it's police officers. Why are they trying to do the opposite?
A ring of drug-dealing police officers had recruited Davis to work for them and wanted to silence him when their business transaction turned sour. There were supports to this claim, such as the fact that when Davis was taken into custody, he had business cards and telephone numbers of a dozen officers and detectives, the story from Davis's mother about some police officers who came to her home, several other stories of policemen and detectives' involvement in drugs, and a detective who was later identified as Crazy Joe. However, ballistic tests linked Davis's weapon to the murder of 4 drug dealers on the 30th of October. Davis and his accomplice faced 100 years in prison if found guilty.
Throughout this case, Davis has painted himself as a victim of corrupt police officers. He says he was a drug enforcer for rogue cops. He says he shot his way out of his sister's apartment only in self-defense.
After days of defense and revelations, Davis was found not guilty of the shootout, but was convicted on gun charges and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Davis says he was greeted with hugs and applause when he got back to his cell. His attorney had put the entire NYPD on trial and stained the department's reputation. But Davis got an additional 25-year sentence for the killing of a drug dealer from his past. His trial revealed a lot of police wrongdoings. In a way, Davis became a folk hero as he got the better of the white police officers who had been intimidating blacks for years. Larry Davis was stabbed to death while serving his sentence at Shawangunk Correctional Facility by Blue Boy. He was 41. People still wonder how Davis was able to get away with so much. He was one of the few who went toe-to-toe with the police and lived to tell the tale. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want me to make more videos like this. See you in the next one.